what were the key things you needed to get the museum ready for transfer to trust?
I'm not sure I can remember them all, but I'd say that I think there are a number of things we had to work on. I suppose you're thinking about governance. Like, governance is really important. Absolutely, vital to get that all right. So just in terms of those early days, you're working with a new board of trustees who don't necessarily know each other, and you've got to establish the way of working. When you have meetings, how long they're going to be, and what subcommittees you want to create. So there's all the governance aspect and getting that right, and you can't really spend too much time on governance. Governance is absolutely critical. In fact, I went on a claw day, a training day, on also on how the chair and the director should work, which was quite useful. Oh. So I took my chair away we went to the Whitechapel Art Gallery for a day, and it was a very useful workshop because our new chairman was he had a background in property and in London. And he was newly retired, and he brought a completely different sort of skill set into the museum. So that was certainly interesting for me in terms of working with very different people. Like all the people on our board came with a skill, and I think were highly skilled individuals who generously did and do give their time to the museum. But you're developing it's not a contractual relationship. This is a relationship you're developing with this new team of people built on respect and regard for everyone and what they give to the operation. So
and a common goal as well.
Yeah. So time, I suppose, working out, establishing your way of working and servicing the new board is really important. 2P was an issue. Of course, we had to 2P staff across.
Yeah. Did you have a lot of staff that came over?
Yeah, the museum is about 10 FT, but it's about 50 people, I would say now. So it's about 50 because with our trustees, with our volunteers, we now have a lot of volunteers we didn't used to, and with staff. So the museum is much bigger than it was. But we,
Was that something that was new to you, having to do that process?
The 2P process, yes, absolutely, and we brought in. I suppose, one thing to say in terms of establishing a trust is that we decided we didn't make new appointments for the particular essential things you need with an organisation like HR, etc. Yeah. But we brought in forms of consultancies. So we had a relationship with an HR professional, so we didn't, and we had a contractual relationship, and that is something we've continued to do over 10 years. So we haven't brought people in, but we've used specialists where we've needed to.
I imagine that can be quite handy for the.
Well, it's quite low cost, so you don't have the establishment costs. So we brought in someone who had skill who already had those skills of managing the 2P process. So they did that.
Interesting, very useful person to have that.
Yeah, so I think so the governance was important, and indeed the 2P was a big process, and I think one thing that I think that we learned, working with new trustees, is that you need to there wasn't pressure to take on areas of knowledge or experience that we didn't know. Perhaps you might do in a smaller organisation or in a local authority. So our board are always keen that we just brought in a specialist to advise when you needed it, like the HR consultant. Yeah. So we didn't need to spend vast amounts of time looking through HR law, which would have been extremely tedious.
Yes.
So you just brought in a specialist. And that's been true throughout the process, and you want to free up time to do what you need to do. So, and that's always been our objective, to reduce paperwork, red tape, and anything which prevents you from delivering your objectives.
Absolutely.
So we've always been very keen to. I've certainly always been very keen to reduce and really cut back on those sorts of administrative functions that you don't need to carry.
Were there any surprises in that process when you were first moving over?
Well, I think another thing we did in the soon after we moved to Trust, we had some very good Arts Council support, some funding, and we carried out some various projects. One which was right at the beginning. We used the DP partnership to look at our fundraising skills. So that was the first consultancy we brought in, and later, soon after that, we brought in a consultancy to work on the word I'm looking for is a new development plan for the museum. So there were two building blocks which you did early on. Now the fundraising thing was really interesting, and Judy Niner ran that for us, and we called it Fit for Fundraising. And I think the thing that she came on and worked with us and our new team, which had been local authority but were now employed by the Trust, and she worked with us, and it was a really, really useful process because one thing she underlined for us was that you're a local authority one day and then the next day you're Trust. It doesn't mean to say you can raise money on that day because people don't view you as being. It takes a long time for the public to begin to see you as something that's independent.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Judy's message was that it's going to take you quite a long time to make this museum fit to receive money from donations.
I see.
So, and that's about changing the culture and how it appears. And actually, it's a massive job because all the staff have to make that journey from being local authority employees to being employees of the Trust, and that doesn't happen overnight. That takes months and years. That cultural change, and there's a lot to learn in terms of how you talk to your potential funders and getting to know who they are, because I don't think we knew those people, or we didn't interact with those people. We didn't have those networks beforehand. You don't have those in a local authority because they're completely different set of people. So they weren't there. So we've built that, but it's taken years to do that.
Yeah.
And it's been made easier because we've got a super board who have made those introductions for us. So it isn't, that process of being a charity and then being actually able to raise funds. That takes time. It's not done in a year or two. It probably takes, 4 or 5 years to begin to look like something which is independent and not actually a local authority run museum, and something which you might want to donate to.
Exactly.
Be it a bequest or to make a donation. So it took time. So that was the first big project we did, and that was super. I think it was realistic, and we didn't overpromise, and certainly we didn't get discouraged when fundraising didn't immediately happen. The second thing we did though was to do a big development plan for the museum. So we brought in a consultant to do that, also funded by Arts Council, and that did an asset review, looking at what we had and looking at the potentials for change and development. And basically, that took 12 months or so. And the development program, which we're now delivering, the stage development program, is really what that report highlighted. So actually, in terms of getting things in the right order, I think that is very important. So our first building block was to say, okay, how do we make this new Trust? How do we make it fit to fundraise? Those are Judy Niner's words. Secondly, how can we develop the museum? And at the end of that process, when we signed off on a development plan which gave us 3 or 4 projects within a stage 1 and a stage 2, and then subsequent to that, really we've been delivering on those projects. So in 2018 we opened our new pie gallery and refurbished and reorganised this part of the room. The room we're sitting now, the Rosemary Higham Library, it was also a development project. And we're just about to completely redo our shop, funded by the Gulf of Western Foundation, which is an 80,000 redevelopment, which will completely transform it, it's really important for our bottom line. But it's also on that development plan. Other things we need to do is to redo our waterways gallery in the bridge below us. That's the next up, well, the projects extend into the years to come.
Yeah, many projects going
So
on.
getting things in the right order was really important.
One of the first things I would say is that it's being really clear on public value. It comes back to that point. In terms of having the evidence for the public value you're delivering now as a service, and also the potential you have to deliver in the future. Of course, it's the potential for the future, building on what you're doing that works well now, that actually gives you, starts to give you the narrative for being able to make the case to yourselves as individuals involved in decision making, but also incredibly importantly to the wider stakeholders, including staff, including volunteers, including your local government funders. I mean, with Hampshire, for example, we had quite a number of district and borough council funders, as you will remember, that we had to also kind of bring with us on a journey, as well as the county council and the city council and other key stakeholders as well. So being really clear on public value, having evidence, testing and challenging that, and when you're confident that this is the right way forward, then believing in that and bringing that confidence to the table around influence and making the case. I think there's definitely something really strong as part of that process around active communications. So this again is all about talking, inspiring, yes, but also very importantly about listening as well, recognising the touch points, recognising that where the value for each of your different stakeholders really sits, so that you're able to sort of create, because it is a creative process, you're able to create a proposition that is absolutely connecting as far as possible. There's always compromises in the world, but as far as possible with those key stakeholder values that people hold dear and don't want to lose and want to see going forward. So I'd say that's right at the heart, I think, of the key characteristics is that ability to create your narrative, which you're confident about, which is robust, which you can sell in to stakeholders. I think it's really important to get the right people. People are at the heart of anything. People make things happen. They are the creative inspiration and the knowledge, and that works across the organisation. And it's always a rough road. It's never a straightforward ride, transformational change. But I think one of the things is being confident again about the kind of skills and knowledge and values that people will need to have in order to be able to take that journey with you. And I think that goes across the piece. It particularly the new factor, if you like, in the mix is obviously the trustee board. So making sure that you get the right people around the board at that early stage. I think you need to have a little bit of a risk appetite at that early stage to be a trustee that's taking on something new and actually, yes, hypothetically there, but unproven. So at the beginning, that requires a certain set of skills, knowledge, behaviours of the board, but recognising that within 1 to 2 years, you're moving into a more stable presence, and you're going to need different skills and you're going to need to evolve and develop those, add those into the mix over that period of time. So it's not just a question of flip the switch, we've moved over, right, now we can just put our feet back and there's an organisational leadership sort of project that continues forever, but certainly is developing within 6 months to a year to 2 years over that time. I think the other main thing I would say is know the money. Know, and this is what is quite difficult sometimes, with all due respect to local government, finance and accountancy and so on, which all do wonderful work within that context, but knowing the financial narrative to the level of detail that you need to know to be sustainable, resilient, creative, innovative, as an independent organisation is a very different level. So work as hard as possible to understand that level of detail as early as possible, and work as hard as possible to encourage the local authority to understand that too, because there's a little bit of letting go of that financial control to give you the picture. So I think, yeah, in summary, plan right, but there's a leap of faith at the end of it. You know, go with, inspire your people, and you know, be inspired by your people, because that's really important. You know, the team inspires everybody to actually just go for it.
When you first started at Gunnersbury, you were responsible for fleshing out the inherited business plan and recruiting a new team. How did you go about this, and what were the challenges?
Yes, I did inherit a business plan, very, very comprehensive document, slathered in the appropriate consultants' logos, etc. And it was a really, really strong starting point. So I would not for one moment say I came in and I tore it up and we started again, because we didn't. We actually built on something that had some very sound principles to it. But one of the things that was most interesting is the business plan didn't really take account of startup costs. So one of the interesting things about Gunnersbury is that if you were launching Gunnersbury, I guess, as a business, you would probably consider that we were undercapitalised at the outset. And that actually has been problematic over the succeeding 3 and a bit years that we've actually been trading. So a business plan that looked very much at revenue lines, very much at service delivery, marketing, audience development plans, all the rest of it, but ignored the fact that if you don't actually have enough startup capital, what you're going to be doing is essentially playing catch up the whole time. So we were founded with a startup loan of £250,000. I didn't think it was enough, but given the fact that we were initially offered £100,000, so £250,000, and it was at 5.12% interest. So it wasn't, this is 2017-18, so it was a significant above market rate. But what's interesting about that is that when I pushed back a little bit to the local authorities, there's 2 of them, only one of them was prepared to make the loan. And that single authority said, well, actually, we've scored you and you're quite high risk. And I was kind of, hang on a minute, guys, you've set us up and you think that we're high risk for a loan. There's a little bit, I'm slightly concerned about that. So we debated it out, and long story short, the authority that did make the loan actually came down from their initial offer. Their initial offer was 10.75, which I was told reflected our risk. So we got it down, we halved it, got it down to 5.12. So we borrowed £250,000. We do actually have the facility to borrow another 100,000, so the envelope of borrowing was 350. We took the £250,000 and we run with it. What it has meant was that probably we brought on some of those income generation opportunities a little earlier than we might have done if we'd have followed the business plan, because the business plan had incremental growth in income, as it would, a taper. What we did is, because I actually felt that we didn't really have enough money to start with, we had to bring in some high earning events rather earlier in our genesis than perhaps was ideal. So, as I've mentioned earlier, it meant that we actually, in our first summer, brought in a very large commercial pop concert. But I needed that because I needed it to recruit staff. because we had to pay wages. We had to build a team and build a team quickly. Because when I came, we had a skeleton team of mainly local authority appointees. Our gardens team, we have 75 hectares of historic grade 2 garden here. Our gardens team consisted of one gardener. We had to build that. We had to buy him a vehicle. We had to buy equipment. So in terms of that business plan piece, great business plan, but if you write a business plan that doesn't include the specifics of the capital investment you need up front to actually prosecute that plan, it's something of a challenge. And I think my advice to anybody doing this would be to make sure you get the upfront investment right. My chairman of our board, who comes from the private sector, who is a successful businessman, launched his own business, he actually came in as chair after we'd been operating for about a year and a half, so he wasn't the original chair. And one of the things when he landed, he said to me, David, how have you managed to get this far on that level of capitalisation? You were undercapitalised from the start, you should have had more money, blah, 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 blah. I said, well, don't disagree with you, Chair, but it is what it is, and we had to do what we had to do. But yeah, I'm probably labouring a little bit, but I do think getting the upfront costs identified, getting the right financing in is absolutely critical, and we possibly didn't have that. And I think that has, that's proved a problem as we've gone along. As we are now, we still have that £100,000 facility, but to be quite candid with you, I'm not really keen to bring more debt into the business at that rate. As we trade, we get more solid audited accounts. I think we can present a much better case to a social finance lender. When I was discussing with the councils their interest rate offer, they actually did say to me, well, if you do better, David, go somewhere else. So I went off to CAF Bank and other social finance lenders, and they just said, we've got no track record. You're brand new, and remind us who set you up. 2 local authorities. Well, actually, we'd expect them to fund you. If you wanted to come to us at year 3, year 5, because you actually want to grow, then we'll talk to you. But actually, we're not going to lend you startup finance. So went off, did that exploration, came back to the council slightly tail between legs and said, okay, we'll take your money. But I think it's critically important. You can have a business plan, but unless you finance it up front in the correct way, it becomes a bit of a millstone around your neck, because it raised expectations of audience numbers, of service delivery targets. All of those were set quite high, and we've had to renegotiate a little bit of that. And I have to say, the 2 local authorities have been very, very flexible around that. I think they possibly implicitly recognised that they didn't quite get it right at the beginning, but they have worked with us to unpick some of the legacy of that. So certainly this is me being on camera, having moaned about my 2 local authority founders and my key partners. But it's important to get it right first time.